Good morning, everyone. I'm
Morning.
so
Good
excited.
morning.
So excited for us to start this is actually our third annual summit. But this year we've changed our theme to focus in really on our target audiences around faith and community. So welcome to the third annual Access Summit. And this year's theme, we're focusing on closing the STEM equity gap in Black and Brown communities. And so this is a timely discussion as we look at some of the things that are taking place, some of the events taking place in our nation. And so as we move forward, I just want to start with a brief introduction of what is Access. So I want to introduce my team members first. I see one team member on as a participant. Let's make her a panelist as well, if possible. Lydia, Dr. Dana Garcia. She's on today. She's one of our co-principal investigators for this project. Let me go back here. And so we thank you for joining. We also have Dr. Christy Daniel. So the three of us are faculty members at Texas State. And we have our external evaluator on as well. If you can also make her a panelist as well. And so this is the Access research team, research and evaluation team that's been responsible for meeting the goals of the grant project. But we also have a nonprofit arm. So what we committed to the National Science Foundation was that as a part of this grant, that we would incubate a nonprofit. And so the nonprofit arm serves as our backbone organization to help implement this university community partnership within the community. And so I am on the board in addition to Dr. Nina Hayes. She is actually out of Kentucky, but she served as one of our inaugural board members. We also have Dr. Dana Garcia. So we're both on the research team as well as on the board of the nonprofit. Really excited to have Dr. Karen Ryan on board, in addition to Dr. Brett Lee. And we have a couple of individuals that have served as staff and volunteers as needed. And so thankful for Mrs. Algie Thompson, and many of you who have participated with our programming know that Algie has served initially through our pilot last summer from site to site. And then we have Lydia Dobbins joining us today as program manager. So what is Access? I mentioned a grant funded project. So for the last 2.5 years, we've been funded by the National Science Foundation. And so Access is the project started as a design and development launch pilot. And we were one of 70 projects from around the nation. And so our goal was to form the Access Network. And so the P2P movement, as I mentioned, serves as the backbone organization. And we have also adopted Access Network as a DBA name so that we can fully work as a fiscal sponsor of the network. I'm also working currently with a branding strategist to help brand P2P and Access Network. So stay tuned for some new branding around how we communicate our identity and what we are, because our primary initiative for the P2P movement is to serve as the backbone organization. And so as part of this Access Network, we're building an ecosystem. This university community partnership is basically a coalition of faith-based leaders in collaboration with action researchers, advocates, and activators, starting here in the greater San Marcos region, but also we extend out. There's been interest in other organizations within Austin and other parts of Central Texas. We also have a program in Houston, an ag science program for African-American youth that is also interested in joining our network as well. So we're expanding out, and we really want to serve as a model, a solution to help engage more Black and Brown students in enrichment activities outside of school time. And so in order to do that, we have our action researchers. We also have our advocates. And so I consider organizations such as Rural Capital Area Workforce Solutions as an advocate. And we're growing other partnerships based on the panels that you see as a part of this summit. And then we have our activators. Our activators are those that are on the front line. Those are who are actually facilitating informal, because it's outside of school, informal STEM enrichment activities. And so we're really excited and thankful for some of the organizations that we've had the opportunity to partner with here locally in San Marcos, Texas. And so I mentioned backbone organizations. For those of you who are familiar with collective impact, you know that that is a term often used in that framework. So collective impact helps us to basically develop a coalition with a shared vision, shared goals and metrics, as well as the organization arm within the community helps for us to fund dedicated staff and build a governance structure for how we collaborate within a community context. And so this is one way in terms of a solution that we are diversifying the STEM workforce. So by us engaging partners from various backgrounds, we've been able to, first of all, through our research. So this is a research-driven model where we have collected data from STEM majors at Texas State. And we'll share more in detail about this during the summit, like on tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we have a session where we'll talk all about the research that we've gathered. So if you're going to be with us for the next 3 days, then you'll have a chance to learn more about that. But basically, we developed our model. And so what is the ACCESS model? The ACCESS model serves as an evidence-based or research-driven, culturally relevant or responsive K through 12 STEM intervention framework. So it's basically a curriculum framework model based on the research that we've developed. And as a part of that model, as we looked at the research, we had a critical lens to understand what are some of the experiences of Black and Brown students or Black and Hispanic students within community contexts, within not just community or outside of school, but also school context, because we believe that this way for engaging, this framework for engaging more Black and Hispanic youth in STEM enrichment, that is also a model that can be leveraged by school district partners as well. And so through our systematic literature review, our survey of STEM majors at a Hispanic serving institution, as well as conducting focus group interviews, we had an opportunity to develop an asset-based approach to understanding what are the current assets within their community, and then how can we utilize those assets to engage more Black and Hispanic students in STEM. And then also the formative evaluation of the model, since this is our new model, helps to inform just what potential this model has to reach more youth in other communities as well. So we'll share more about the model tomorrow. So in some of our impact to date, through our pilot 2 summers ago, we were able to serve 64 students. We trained 9 activators that were a part of 6 different organizations here locally in San Marcos. And then we were able to reach more than half of the demographics of the students that we were able to reach were Black and Brown students. And so as a result of these students participating in these summer enrichment camps, which included a vacation Bible school that had STEM integrated within it, we're going to talk more about that on tomorrow as well during the 12:30 session. In addition, these students did indicate that they had more interest in STEM. And so in the interest of time, I'm mindful of the time here. because I want to move to this great discussion that we're going to have. Um, this is also another way that we see how we can continue to expand our ecosystem. And so by taking the best practices of what we've learned during our pilot here in San Marcos, by forming this inaugural access network ecosystem, designing and developing this collaboration and engagement model that includes resources as well as includes lesson plans and different things that can be utilized by other organizations. We were able to pilot that model at 5 sites. And then based on that, we can begin to expand this model into new communities. And so our goal is to, through this summit, is to be able to connect with other organizations here in Central Texas and beyond who are interested in this approach to engaging through faith-based and community organizations, more Black and Brown youth in STEM. And so that concludes the introduction. I want us to move to our exciting panel. I'm really excited about it because we had a chance to engage in a similar conversation last year during the summit in 2019. But by us being on Zoom, we have the opportunity to reach a broader audience. So I'm really excited to have with us this excellent group of not only advocates, but I also believe change agents. I believe each one of these panelists serve as change agents in their own right within their contexts. And so I'm really excited for us to engage in this conversation. We have their bios available on the ACCESS.org website. And so in the interest of time, I just encourage you to go out to the website to review their bios. But today, we're going to give an opportunity for each panelist to share and address the questions that we have provided them in advance, but also we're going to have a time of Q&A at the end of our panel as well for attendees to ask questions. So let's get started. And so for each panelist, I want us to go in the order in terms of looking at how your organization, we're moving on to question number 2. So what are some additional opportunities for faith-based and community organizations to form partnerships or collaborate to diversify the STEM workforce? And so Don, if you'll start us off with what are some ways in which your organization has engaged in collaborations with faith-based and community organizations?
Sure. I think I'll probably end up giving an example or two, but just to give you a bit of an overview, we have within our continuing education division at the college, we have a group that's focused on community education efforts and community outreach and engagement. And the folks on that team are out in the community, meeting with church partners, potential church partners, community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, and talking to them about ways we can bring the college out into the community. One of the interesting things and one of the great assets that faith-based and community-based organizations have is a network that they serve now. And by connecting with that church or with that elementary school or with that nonprofit organization, through them, we're able to start bringing the message that, and this is extremely important, we're the community's college. And as the community's college, we are a real, tangible, accessible resource for those out in the community. Back to what you were saying earlier about establishing an asset map for the various communities. One of the things that was really shocking to me, actually one of the board members, Brett Lee, had come to one of my classes at Texas State, and he was talking about the asset map that was being developed, he was working on in San Marcos, and ACC was not on it at all. And so it's important for us, I think, to be able to go meet people where they are and bring the message that the college is an accessible and realistic resource for them. And then through those partnerships, identify ways to make it real. Instead of asking the community to consistently come to where we are, we need to be taking the college to where the community is. And the community-based and faith-based organizations are critical partners in making that happen.
Excuse me, let me put that on mute. Okay.
That's the good part about technology today, right?
All right, great. Thank you, Don.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's move on to Laura.
Hi, how are y'all? I want to just add to what Don's saying, and yes, it's part of it. Part of my biggest, at least from what I've seen in the last year or so, is that a lot of it has to do with awareness of opportunity. And what we do currently is we're working with some of the high schools to create these manufacturing academies that'll help usher some of these students while they're in high school into our programs. But even in that aspect, I see the biggest challenge is just that awareness of what opportunities are there. A lot of students don't realize, they think of community college or any university as oh, that's not for me, or it's hard, or that kind of mentality that we tend to bring. But in reality, there's so many levels of opportunities within a community college, especially from just getting some fundamental skills to get you in that industry to these STEM fields that are high paying and still in demand.
Mm-hmm.
To the academic tracks. And what we're doing at the college right now is trying to create a smooth transition from one point to the other, meaning there's lots of different points along the way where some student might enter or exit temporarily, and we want to make that transition as smooth as possible. So for now, I think my biggest goal for this coming year is that awareness factor, letting students know that it's not all about calculus, for example. There's a lot of opportunities to gain some real tangible skills that will lead to really productive and high-paying jobs long-term. And so they need to know that those are there. And they also need to know, I think, the awareness is that, things are changing and technology is changing, and it's still it's still a learning experience for all of us. And so they need to be open to that and engage. So right now with the virtual world, I think we have that opportunity to, like you said earlier, reach more people. And so if you'll have, for example, any kind of workshops or seminars, I think including the communities like the colleges, the community colleges to participate. And we're trying really hard to come up with videos and presentations that are much more fun, because it is you've got to get them to listen first. And I really, once they hear the story, at least that was my experience as a student. Once I heard the opportunities, suddenly everything changed. But before then, I had no interest as a student when I was in high school. So I hear what you're saying. And so again, just include us in the conversation as much as we can, and we will be happy to come out and share with you, with any community, any organization that's interested in connecting with us.
Great, thank you for that, Laura. So let's talk about opportunities with workforce development agencies, either at the local, regional levels. And so Kara, if you could share from your perspective.
Sure. So I'll get started. We are I don't think, I'll just say it, we tend to be a partial funder for a lot of the opportunities that come about. We, as people come to us and as job seekers come to us, we look for ways to essentially connect them to opportunities at ACC to pay for that training. Recognizing that just because someone's come into our agency doesn't necessarily mean maybe they're quite ready to connect to ACC quite yet. They might need support in terms of workforce housing, transportation, childcare, internet access even, and some of these things we can't directly impact, but we do have funds available for those who qualify to support to support childcare and transportation. And we do connect you with agencies, or we will work together to partner with other agencies to help with the other parts of that stability, because we want to help our job seekers really find that stability in order to build their confidence to enter into this training and be able to commit to it. We know, we know a lot of our training is right now based in Austin, in the Travis County, and we are working with ACC to move it further out into the rural regions. And it's always a process, and that's going to also take some community efforts that we're all looking to partner on. And we hope to be one of those connectors that also help to find the right location and help build out that greater accessibility as a team. And I don't know if Robert's back, but I can speak a little bit to, oh, there you are. Did you want to talk about that? Did you want to talk about some of this? Because so much of what we do is in tandem. I feel like everyone is in tandem in this conversation.
Actually, I agree with everything you said. I do want to make some, highlight some points that Don and Laura made. Early engagement's important. Getting the kids engaged, and how do you do that? I mean, there's got to be a relatable way to make that connection. You know, when you do early engagement for STEM related programs, the parent has to understand it. In some cases, right away they understand it, but you find that in most cases they don't. Laura alluded to the fact that she didn't know a lot of that, and that matters. Relatable and awareness. If you're a community-based program and you're a faith-based program, the best thing you could do is become more aware of who the players are in your community. And what I mean by that is, who are the businesses that participate? Where are your kids going to go eventually when they leave high school and start college? You know, you literally have to build a roadmap, identify where your kids are going. You need early engagement. Mentoring is incredibly important. Understanding that if you do have kids that are not currently, and I'm talking about minority kids that are not currently in STEM programs, there might be some mentoring that needs to take place. And I say all this because I had a project up in Northeast Texas. I was working with an EDC. We were looking to build a project for the local community and using one of the state programs. And what we found is that 50% of that community, slightly over 50% of that community, was Hispanic. And I asked the economic development director, have you engaged that community? And he says, no. I says, have they come to any of your events? Do they participate? And they said, no. I said, so more than half of your community, the part that actually thrives and is growing, you're not engaging them at all. Says, no, we're not. I said, is there a reason for this? They just don't engage. We've tried. So they reached out to the local churches and they started doing these informational type symposiums, giving the community an idea of what the different agencies and the different local quasi-government entities offer. And that helped considerably. Especially the small business awareness, the types of programs and loans that are available. And this is all before COVID. Man, this is about a year ago.
Wow.
So that type of thing really helps. Then, you know, of course, the programs that you need to know, your biggest asset as far as workforce related type programs is always going to be your workforce board, your local workforce board, like Real Cap. We are essentially, they are an extension of TWC, and TWC, we do have some programs that offer assistance, but really every time that we get a call and it's a local community, the first thing we do is we say, have you contacted your local workforce board? Because that's really where you want to start. Or if it's education related, we usually say, have you contacted your college or your local training provider? Those things are important. So again, I say, who are the players in your community? Who are the businesses that that will relate to STEM related types of programs? And one last thing, on STEM related programs, it's not just about college bound. Granted, we do need more engineers, we need more computer specialists, people in the science and math fields, certainly. But there's a whole lot of other workforce related programs that relate to it. For example, an electrician, that's STEM related. You can't, most electricians are pretty smart and their math skills are outstanding. So you do need more of those types of workers that we are lacking terribly in Texas. So I hope that helps. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for that, for those examples, and also for bringing us down to earth in terms of, I think that because of the line of work that we're in, there's a strategic part of it, but there's also the part of being on the ground, on the front line, working in these communities. And so, typically with coalitions and the introduction that I gave, basically I gave you more of the strategic part of how do you bring these organizations together. But in order for us to get to the root of how we're going to help our youth to obtain, I think it's higher wage, higher skilled opportunities. So it's not just about a college degree. I wholeheartedly agree. And that's something that's been a transition, a shift in my mindset as a result of being a part of this program. And so I'm going to give you a chance to talk. Mark, we haven't forgotten about you. Just have to do one quick insert here because that really spoke to my heart and passion for doing this work. In terms of, my high school guidance counselor told me I was not college material. And so, and to be truthful, I was not the strongest student. I was not prepared well academically. And so I embody this work because I can relate to it. I'm a product of vocational education. And so I went to a comprehensive high school. And so because I was on this vocational ed track, she told me I wasn't college material, but there was a fellowship, a scholarship available for me to pursue college that she didn't want me to pursue. So if my mom would not have gotten involved and said, my daughter's going to college, I needed that advocate, right? So faith-based and community organizations can help serve for advocates when the parents are absent, because sometimes the parents are absent as well for various reasons, right? And so also mentorship, someone telling, and this is in the research as well, that support, those social supports, community, faith, family, yes, and antagonistic. Thank you, Dana, for that as well. So we can go on about that, but that's really getting to the heart of why we're having this discussion and how can we truly drive change. But the reason that I pursued a PhD was because I recognized that in order to drive change systemically, you have to be involved at a strategic level as well. Kara, and then we got to hear from Mark.
I'm sorry, I know, and you guys made such great points. I wanted to make sure that this part was highlighted about some of our services, is that when a job seeker does come into our offices, and I hope that all of you as leaders in our community will help guide your membership, your job seekers into our offices. They are assigned a case manager so that we can help guide them and go along that career lattice. We do have career lattice resources so they can find that initial certification and then kind of look for their way up. So I just wanted to make sure that was out there too. We do want to play that role and be a part of that advocacy along with you, because we know it takes a village.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry, Mark. You're
You know what, Kara? You took the words right out of my mouth. I was just sitting here thinking, that's the good old saying, it takes a village. And I have to say that I am absolutely proud to be a part of this village, because if it were not for our community partners like, Rural Capital Workforce Board, I wouldn't be here today. Right. So it's by way of those connections out there. Anytime that I go into a market, I identify who are those partners that are out there that we can pull on to, get into the community to really help us engage and be a part of the community. Donald was talking about the awareness, and Laura, and, even Robert talking about the awareness and the mentoring, and all of those are real factors. I was doing some research earlier today, like it's just 10:30 and I was doing research earlier today, but one of the things that I found, and looking at the diversity of some of the major schools, the universities, and when you have 64% white demographic in the school population, or 74% white demographic in the school population, and then your educators match that demographic, it's more challenging to identify diverse students enrolling in those programs. So taking it back even further, we need more diverse students in the STEM programs to pull more diverse talent from the STEM programs. So, and that goes back to that early education, that awareness. So within TD, and I'm sure, there are a lot of industry partners, because I talk to them and I see them, and, we're on these committees, and we have the same conversation you guys are having. How can we be involved? How can we get, exposure to the community about what we offer, what career paths look like, get them that exposure. So, we will work with Girl Scouts of America to teach them about careers in the STEMs. We will, Hilti had I made a note recently that, they did a practicum with finance students on a collegiate level and on a high school level. Skanska, they partnered with Collin College, which is in North Texas, to host careers in the STEMs for females. There's a huge focus on females going into not only the STEMs, but, construction. Construction, the diversity in construction, or the lack thereof, I should say, is not a new topic. It's an ongoing topic. But one thing I can say is that companies, not just in the construction industry, but industries across the board, realize that they need to have a more diverse pool of partners, workforce, workers, employees, right? It's one of those that it really goes without saying that the more diverse a company is in terms of gender, race, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, the ability, geography, religion, all of those, providing a more inclusive environment. It brings about retention for talent. It creates more engagement and productivity. We know that there's more innovation that comes out of it, and higher performance for organizations, right? So, for TD, having those workforce partners and community partners, faith-based partners, we work with Austin Community College, Alamo colleges. We're looking at HBCUs. So strategically identifying those underserved, disadvantaged markets within our geographies and going to them and saying, hey, you know what? We're here. We're here to help provide careers. We're here to help families. We're here and we're invested in those communities. So it's not, companies across the board are looking for those opportunities. We just need you guys to say, here's what we have going on. Because while I can say all day long, TD would love, 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 love to have as many work-based learning opportunities as possible. I'm sure companies are saying that all the time. The question is whether or not they have the budget to support it. And if we don't have the budget to support those desires and those wants and needs, then we need funding to support that. So partnering with the workforce to find out what type of, funding, grants, incentives, whatever programs are out there, is extremely important. That's vital to the success of these, what we want to do, just to help with not just like Robert was saying, not just to help with the STEMs, but across the board with skilled trades. They don't have to come to us, especially in early employment, having extreme experience.
Mhm.
We just want the basic fundamentals and some employability skills that we can build on. Just have some good old common sense. We can work with that, right? So we're there. More and more companies every day are making themselves available and looking for those opportunities, and building in specific roles like mine that focus on building those partnerships and relationships strategically, putting the programs together and carrying out those plans.
Can I just add, TDI is definitely one of our favorite organizations to work with. And I say this because you guys are so engaged, looking to use our resources. We love to find opportunities to do that. And not only that, you're really looking for that diversity within your workforce. I love your interest in being inclusive and trying to work on getting more women into the field. I think that's so incredibly exciting and important for how we grow as a community. And we love to continue to support that and look forward to moving forward in that effort, because you guys are really doing a fantastic job.
Well, thank you. And we look forward to continuing to work with you.
I have a question. This is Robert.
Sure.
So with TD Industries, and I know you don't speak for upper management, and I realize that they would probably need to make that decision at that level, but would they, and have they in the past worked with faith-based organizations to build a program, or perhaps assist a program that exists in STEM-related awareness? And I think really awareness is where you fit early on in this whole effort. If you're looking at the development of a career pathway, or even in just kids going into college, the awareness piece is incredibly important, and making it relatable. You learn this math and you end up doing this, or science is the basis of this. If you learn this is what this will transfer into this. Is that something that TD Industries would be willing to do, or have they?
Yep, I will say yes.
Good. That's
And I
something
say
that
yes because I will be the one carrying it out.
And I will say, Mark is at every single what are the career and technical education committees at all of our ISDs. Anytime we've ever sent her an invite, she has shown up, been present, and really volunteered to bring resources into the school district, which is awesome, because that's half the battle in getting out that awareness and increasing that inclusion. So.
And I think the reason why I brought it up was more of as people are listening, and then I know this is being recorded, and then as they watch the recording, they'll note that you have a partner. I mentioned earlier that you need to know who's the players in your community. Who are your business community leaders that are going to participate with the development of these young people that are potentially going to go into this field. And this is where that piece, that role in which business plays a part. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up too.
And that's great. And I think also, Laura, you do a lot with schools as well. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, well, one of the main things we're doing is like I said, the high school academy. I'm also, so with the high school academy, we are trying to be a little bit more inclusive with the students in terms of we're creating a mentorship program for them, like Robert was mentioning, because getting the young students to come to the program is one thing, but getting them to stay is much harder. So we definitely have included a mentorship program along with that. And we try to, like I said, engage them with teachers that are more dynamic, also more interactive, because we know that, they need to be active to stay engaged. Classes aren't always fun the first time around, or having to learn all that material, and so it's all about everything, keeping them all together. When we did our orientation or our commitment ceremony for the high school, for example, we included every parent because, as many of you mentioned, it's a community. And I personally have had students where they come to, to school, regular ACC students, and then they'll drop out because their family is questioning, why are you wasting time when you could be working, and things of that nature. So it's not just about school. It's about all the other support services that are going to keep them there. And as you mentioned, they need to see role models that are like them. When I was younger, I didn't know anyone went to college. I didn't know any Hispanic or Black or any kind of minority that was in a professional field. So having access to those professionals that are like them gives them a vision to be able to achieve that goal. And so we're doing that with the high schools. More and more, I personally reach out to a lot of people that have children that have graduated that are not doing anything particularly with their career, because sometimes the timing is important and they're not ready to go to school. But we're finding that we're connecting with more and more young students that have recently graduated within, like, say, 3 to 5 years, so that they can, maybe now it's a good time to come back and look at what the opportunities are. And we have a lot of short training, like we mentioned in Continuing Ed. We have an 8-week program that can get them into a tech job at entry level. And then from there, like, you open up the opportunities that are available to them. And last but not least, we also support Samsung's apprentice program, which are high school students that graduate that Samsung will hire into an apprentice role. Again, before we were involved with them, most of them would fall out one way or another. They'd quit, they'd fail, because they were on their own. Once we partnered with them to help support that apprentice program, we're having each year a higher and higher retention and success rate in getting them out the door in the 2 years, which is usually an atypical of a student. So again, it's just being able to find those partnerships that we can work together. No one can do it on their own. Even the companies can't do it on their own. They have to be a collaborative group, such that we're focusing on how to get that student from point A to B.
Yes.
Yeah. And, this webinar is a great avenue for, extending partnerships. In Tarrant County, you guys know I'm in the Dallas North Texas area, but all over. But in Tarrant County, there's a monthly group similar to what Kara started with the youth collaboration, and it's industry and community organizations, faith-based organizations, all coming together to talk about services and opportunities. So we share all that information, and everybody pulls from it what they can as far as which connections they can make, and they move on to working with those connections, and then the next month we come back around and have the discussions again. So we continue to share that information on a monthly basis.
I want you to know that you're not alone. Outside of the college, there are other organizations. I can't think of the organization in San Antonio that does that works with one of the universities, or actually it's housed in one of the universities. It slips. You know who I'm talking about? Anyone? Okay, well, anyway, there are organizations that actually offer assistance. They fund mentors. In some cases, not necessarily mentors, but life coaches. Make sure you go to school. Why can't you go to class today? Oh, you need gas money. Those life coaches also are important, especially the poor minority who actually has the skill to do these things. I'll use my older brother as an example. I grew up in a very poor home, and so it was really my mom and my brother and my sister and we didn't have access to a lot of that. My brother, who was incredibly intelligent, should have been an electrical engineer, but he knew business. And so he went into business because the family was in business. But I always felt that he would have been a great engineer had he been given those opportunities when he was young. We just couldn't afford and didn't know. But those are good examples, the life coach. But there are a lot of examples out in the world that organizations that offer that help. Just keep that in mind. You're not in it alone.
So recently I started a girls mentoring group with one of the local high schools here, and they're in an underserved area of the Dallas Metroplex. So we have a monthly meeting.
Mhm.
Just had one yesterday, and we go through and talk about, things like confidence and careers and overcoming challenges, identifying our strengths and opportunity, doing a SWOT analysis on ourselves. So there's a lot of personal connection with them. And there was a young lady that joined the call for the first time yesterday, and my school facilitator actually mentioned to me on the side that she was supposed to be on the first call but didn't make it. Her family, her mom is deceased for a couple of years now, and her grandmother, who was taking care of them, passed away. So the older brother is trying to take care of all five of her and her siblings. And she is struggling to stay in school, thinking about dropping out of school because she wants to be able to help her brother. So, I was able to make a connection with her yesterday, and the intent is to continue to be there to support her and talk through things that she may be going through. So, you mentioning that life coach situation, Robert, that just reminded me of that program that I'm working with. So, thanks for bringing that up. But we do need more mentors.
That's a wonderful program.
Thank
Hopefully, maybe that's one of the next steps for the youth collaborative.
you. Yeah. It's needed. It's very necessary. Students don't know what they don't know, especially in
Right.
terms of career paths, or what type of assistance is there for them. You know, so we're there to help them with that.
Yeah, that's also something that we found as well, with the access model. Mentoring is one of those key areas that's not just the key area, but key components of any program. You have to have mentoring. And so one of the things that we did was we conducted a survey with the STEM majors, and we also conducted some one-on-one interviews. We turned those interviews into testimonials. And so on our website, we were playing around with creating avatars. And so we have these talking avatars, but they're real stories, based on what the students shared about their experiences in STEM. And we focused on the students, the Black and Hispanic students, and their stories. And so I think we need to do more in terms of connecting. And it's great, Mark, that you are out there. You're not just talking about it, you're living it in terms of being engaged and being a mentor. One of the biggest gaps I've seen, not just within our programs, but also with other agencies or organizations as well, that we don't have enough mentors involved. And so particularly when we talk about in STEM, from the STEM workforce, whether it be, I'm on another project, we're working with Black and Hispanic students with disabilities. And so in Austin, and so we're working with teachers who are engaging with students from their local schools. So they signed up to basically participate in a professional development, 12-week professional development training. And then they're going to facilitate an out of school time learning for these Black and Hispanic students with disabilities. And they're creating chatbots using IBM Watson. So IBM is a one of the sponsors, and one of the collaborators, but the gap is that we don't have, so this is AI, so artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
The individuals that are participating, we're thankful for them. And the research also supports when you don't have Black and brown mentors, students appreciate any type of mentor as well. But in order for these students to be able to overcome that stereotype threat, or a sense of them not belonging in the industry, they need to see more people that look like them, that engage with them, and mentoring as well as facilitating the programs as well. And that's another tenet of our model, is that we encourage the organizations to diversify their instructors to ensure that the students that are engaged can see others that look like them as well. So this is a great discussion. I see some questions coming in already from our attendees. And so this is exciting.
Shatay,
To see. Yes,
this
Mark.
is Mark. I accidentally hit the camera button and
Okay.
turned myself off.
Okay. Lydia, can you bring Mark back on?
Oh,
and
she
make
said she
her a
just made
host?
me a host again. I
Okay.
promise I won't do that anymore.
I was wondering what happened.
No worries.
To you.
I was trying to hit the mute button and hit the camera.
No problem.
Shatay, I wanted to,
Yes.
so I've been listening to everyone sort of chime in here, and there are a couple of different themes that have come out, and I want to highlight a couple of those really quick, right? Obviously, awareness is an issue, right? And understanding the assets that are available in the community, and then organizing those assets around providing greater access to individuals in our most vulnerable populations to education and training opportunity that will help begin to stair step them into preparation for the world of work today and into the future, right? And it ultimately comes down to, I think, three things that help us sort of organize this work and think about this work. Obviously, the connections we've been talking about. Well, we need to really expand the connections between all of us who are engaged in this work. It's also about coordinating together, and that's where you build your asset map, right? We need to coordinate together and understand the assets that we all bring to the table and how those things can be organized around supporting the students. And then we need to collaborate in order to increase the real access that people have. And I'm going to give a specific example. There is a large church in Northeast Austin called El Shaddai, serves the Hispanic community. And one of the things that we did was in our partnership with El Shaddai was to identify what kinds of assets they have there. And one of the most important assets that many of our community and faith-based partners have is a space, right? It's a space that's comfortable, that's familiar, that's non-threatening to the members of that church. It's a place where they go and have Bible study on Sunday mornings, right? And so if we're willing to then collaborate with El Shaddai and leverage those spaces to bring the training out to them, now you've created an environment that's much more supportive of student learning. And we saw that over and over and over again in the classes that we took to El Shaddai. I think that's an important piece. And so connecting is one piece, then coordinating the assets that are available is another piece, and then collaborating to deliver those services and education and training programs is important. And a second thing that I think that we need to really consider, and this was brought up a couple of different times, sometimes younger students are discouraged from participating in academic training and college. It's time to go to work. It's not for you. It's whatever it is. I think it's important for us to take a multi-generational approach too. Not only do we engage the kids and the younger adults, but we engage their parents. And we identify ways to help support the parents in growing their skill set and improving the opportunities for them, which builds a much stronger foundation for the younger students that we endeavor to serve, right? And so it becomes about not just building agency and self-efficacy in the younger students, it becomes about building collective efficacy in the family and then the community as a whole. And those things are going to be key as we continue this work, as we begin to bring those along who are on the outside looking in right now, who need to understand that we really are an asset. But in order to be an asset, the college to be an asset, we have to be willing to go there. And we have to be willing to meet folks literally, figuratively, and digitally where they are in order to do this. So I just wanted to bring those points up.
Oh, that's great. I love
Great
that.
points.
And I also see Robert chimed in on chat about this multi-layered outreach approach. I would add to this as well, that it reminds me as well as a holistic model. And so where we want to help the whole child. And so not just focus on the academics, but also the social supports as well. But within faith-based communities, and so we have some quasi-governmental agencies on with us today, right? And so we know that church and state, the separation of church and state. And so I just want to put this out there because I think as we talk about working in Black and Brown communities, faith is very important. Historically, it has been. I know that the Pew Research Center is showing us data where faith is not as much as important as it had been. And so we have diversity, equity, inclusion, where we look at more inclusivity of different viewpoints and religion and that type of thing. And so we recognize that is changing. That's a dynamic that's changing, but still looking at that research, still more than half still identify with faith. And it's also supported by the research in terms of, and then oftentimes in my research, I focus on storytelling, which is a method that came out of a religious practice of testimonies. And when we talk about Hispanic community, testimonials, in terms of sharing, which is not often seen as valid research, but we won't go there today because it's not a positivist approach. But I think that people's stories and their truth, that they're valid. And I think everyone on this panel would agree with that. And so, but basically where I'm going with this question is, how do we do this work in these faith communities, in light of the fact that we understand that faith may be important. So I'm appreciative of everyone that's here because you're not afraid to go into those communities, whether you identify with their faith or not. You're willing to go in, and so some do things out of their own personal preferences. But we recognize that if we want to reach a demographic, we have to be willing to go in. So what type of ethical considerations is where I'm going with this work that you would consider working within with faith organizations and community organizations in collaboration?
I think for me and TD, it's about the bigger picture. And if that faith-based organization is my means to getting to that diverse talent, then that's where I should be spending my time. So, like Donald mentioned, where they're comfortable, where they spend their time, we want to be where they are. And I respect different religions, different upbringings, different values. It doesn't keep me from doing my job to the best of my ability.
That's good.
Right. So I'm open. I'm open to learning more about individuals and, what makes them who they are, to have a greater respect for where they come from. And I think that's the approach that we should all be willing to take. So I think the question in the chat was, how do we impose our, where was that question? It was a question.
How do you propose your values without imposing them?
Right. So,
Yeah.
we may have two different sets of values, but respect each other in that difference. One of TD's core values is celebrating individual differences, and differences don't just come in the way of shape, form, or color. There's a lot more to it. So if you're, if you really want to celebrate someone's individual differences, then you You respect their religion, their gender, their skills, their ideas, everything about that individual that is different.
I think it's also important for us to remember that even though we're the training provider or we're the service provider, we don't have all of the answers. We've been granted 2 ears and 1 mouth and should use them in that proportion, right? And so I think it's important for us to listen as we go out into the community, whether it's into a faith-based organization or a community-based organization partner. As we're engaging with them, we need to listen twice as much as we speak. And that will help us to better identify ways we can come alongside and humbly support those that we endeavor to serve. And I think that's an important thing when you go into a church or another a Christian church or other faith-based organization location, remembering that we are humble servants who are there to support, I think is the right attitude to take, and listen twice as much as we speak. And by doing that, I think we can begin to build relationship, engender trust, and then create the opportunities that can help bridge skill gaps for individuals, can help build the community from that organization out.
That's good.
I agree with Dawn and Mark as well. Being respectful of each other. If only our nation would do that. I think the big end result is we take this approach on what we're trying to say, what we have to market. If we focus on what does the end look like, what is it that we're trying to do, how do we get there collaboratively without stepping on each other, I think that's the approach. I would say this, Dr. Ashford Hansard, picking a pilot or a project where we all work together, a project, any community, we ask our partners, be it a Christian organization or Muslim or Jewish or Hindu, Buddhist, doesn't really matter, faith-based. And we tell them what we're trying to do. What's the focus? What are we trying to get to? And ask them, how would you participate? How can you participate? And find a way to bring everybody together to make that work. I think that right now the political climate is such that there's a major division. We're not focused on the end, we're focused on how it makes you feel right now. If we would focus on the end result, what is that we're trying to accomplish, we'd have the results that we're looking for. Yep.
Did anyone else want to comment before we move on to the Q&A?
One last point I'd like to add to that, if that's okay. Everything is been right spot on, that we do have to listen more and engage with them. One thing that I think we need to also point out is that we need to rely on our partners to help us connect with the students, because as I experience, a lot of these students don't want to talk. They stay quiet. So it begins with finding out, how do we get them to open up to us, because we can't listen if they're not saying anything. So especially with the youth. So finding innovative ways to get them to open up is also important to think about. I just add that point.
That's really good. Yeah.
I just want to add, because I think initially, especially for the people who are at the organizations listening to this call, are really based in the Hayes area, and they probably have membership that will likely come into the Workforce Solutions office first, and then be connected to ACC or TDI. And that's not necessarily the only path to take, but in a lot of cases that might be, and you'll be assigned a case manager who will be having to build that trust. But they're all community members. They're likely involved in all of the churches too. They are local individuals who are meant to be supporting and building trust with those job seekers and anyone who comes in the door. I know that we're really grateful for our faith-based communities, our minister. I've been referring to this program that Dr. Ashford has created as our informal ministerial alliance for Hays County, whether she likes it or not, because it is our way of connecting with as many of these communities as we can. We recognize that we have overlapping needs, and that we want to be of service to everyone. So this is our way. Sometimes you might not hear it from us, but it's just because we didn't know to knock on the door. Please come to us if you have any questions.
That's great. Thank you for that. And just to comment on a few things, and then we're going to open it up for questions. One of the biggest benefits of joining the Access Network is, thank you, Kara, we graciously accept that label, that title, because that in terms of our work, we want to help connect these organizations to these resources, to these partnerships. And one thing to keep in mind is the language and how we message that. And that was a learning process for me. When we first applied to the National Science Foundation in 2017 to start this project, overtly in my proposal, it said we are ACCESS was the Association of Church and Community, and a program officer who really caught the vision of what I wanted to do with this proposal came back and graciously redirected me and said, you know, we're interested in your proposal, but the language needs to change. And so the language had to change in terms of faith-based organizations. And so we specialize in being able to work with grassroots level organizations who have access to these populations that we want to reach, but may not have the capacity in terms of the nonprofit organization, 501c3 support, as well as the infrastructure and the resources to apply for grant funding. And so that's where we can help to help undergird organizations, not just here in Hays, but across Central Texas and beyond if there are other partners that are interested, so that we can continue to diversify the STEM workforce. Because if we don't go into these communities where these students are, we will not be able to engage them in these opportunities. And so with that, let's open up the questions. So that we've had some questions come in through the chat. And there may be other questions that come after this, because we want to make this available as well to other audiences. I'm seeing some questions. Lydia, I'm going to need your help with sorting through, because there's been a line of questions that may not have been addressed throughout this. So what would be the first question?
Well, it looks like people have been doing a pretty great job of including some answers to the questions in the chat box. So
Okay.
I think if you have asked a question in the chat box and you don't feel like you got a full enough answer, if you want to go ahead and like resubmit an extension of that question, you can definitely do that. I think the only things I saw that looked like maybe they didn't really get quite directly answered is one, someone was asking Mark if you have heard of High Heels and High Tech. I don't know if you answered that, if that's an
I
organization.
did, and she provided me with a link. Thank you, Dana. So I have access to that information now.
Okay,
I had
cool.
not.
And then there was a question or comment kind of about just getting parents involved.
Okay.
And if we feel like that's impacting kids getting involved in that training. But I think y'all have kind of talked about the wide spectrum of a lot of your organizations, but if anyone had anything else specifically they wanted to include about parents.
I will say that when it comes to parents, that has been an ongoing conversation with the school committees that I've been a part of, the advisory committees, in how do we engage the parents and get them involved in, you know, not just the STEM, but even the students enrolling in some of the CTE programs. right, that are being offered by the schools. A lot of them don't know. Even, you know, with my role at TD Industries, we've, you know, done presentations internally on how we're engaging in the community and the schools. And some of our partners have said, well, I don't think our school offers that. And I'll ask what school district they live in, and they'll tell me. And I say, yes, they do. So they have students going to the high schools and they don't know that they are offering these programs, right? So there is a, you know, a deeper issue with trying to determine how to really engage the parents.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Donovan submitted empowerment language. Every student is successful. Success is accomplishing something. Every human being has the tools and succeeds every day. Help them focus their skills. How do you define success? So does anyone want to share some of their definitions of what success looks like?
You know, the unfortunate thing, as you begin this program, this project, getting more kids into STEM related career fields, is that we won't see the fruits of our labor for a few years. I mean, we can look at the kids that are here and encourage them, you know, the juniors and seniors that are in high school, or even the freshmen and sophomores in college. But it takes a bit before we can actually see, you know, what we could actually consider success. But if we consider success, how we create the infrastructure and the funding models that will assist that infrastructure, then we could look at how many kids or how many students are actually jumping onto that pathway. So, I mean, ultimately, we want to know the number of students that actually move into the field ultimately, but we won't see that the fruits of that labor for a while. But I would think that infrastructure is something we would look at first, and then we would look at whether or not everything's aligned with funding, and knowing that there's got to be support that's involved, and certainly the last thing, of course, a student that actually is successful through the process. So that's what I would think. Thanks.
And just to piggyback on that, one of the ways that we're defining success for Access Network is, and we're expanding this. And so our initial goal was entry into an undergraduate STEM major. And so, but we want to expand that as well as we look at serving not just youth that are college bound, but also incorporate industry certifications. And that was also the reason for diversifying our panel, to make sure that we had voices from those other areas as well. So we're looking at, again, youth and their families, also recognizing the skills and the interests of the youth. We want to make sure that they are prepared for a higher wage, higher skilled occupation. And so I appreciate the career lattices. Thank you, Kira, for sharing that as well. That helps provide some guidance. I've also over the years used the career clusters, the 16 career clusters, and I know that there's alignment there from ONET. Well, ONET that has more than 16, but basically there's an interest profiler. So each one of our youth that goes through any program that's facilitated by an Access Network member completes a career interest survey to determine what are the top 3 career clusters that they are most interested in. And so although we want to engage them in STEM, we recognize that they may have other interests. And so we want to ensure that whatever career pathway they have interest in, we want to help encourage them and provide them the support to do that. We have a learning management system that we use as well in our programs, and we provide access to our network to help facilitate pre and post surveys. And so we want to understand as well at baseline what were their interests or motivations towards STEM, and then at the end, how did that change over time? And so our goal is we use a unique identifier because we're not interested in the names. We leave that to our partners. So we have a unique identifier for each student. But our goal is to be able to track over time Any student that is, as our network grows, we have these students that are engaged and are actually enrolled in this learning management system, regardless of which partner site they participate in. We should be able to understand how often have they participated in a STEM enrichment program, as well as what grade level are they in now, and then at what point are they actually entering into an industry certification program, undergraduate STEM major. And so our goal is to be able to measure this longitudinally. But that takes work and it takes time. But that is definitely, I agree with what you shared, Robert, in terms of over time, how we should be able to track their success as well. Any other questions?
Shatay, I wanted to add something real quick to the success piece. If have just a second on that. I think in addition to the credentials and certificates and things that are markers of successful completion, and a harder, but I think a really important measure of success is also change in mindset. It is one of the things that all of us need to be thinking about is how to encourage. I'm going to use a term that's often used, but how to encourage lifelong learning. How to encourage a learning mindset, a growth mindset. I think that's a really important part of it. The world of work is changing very rapidly. It's becoming more technical every single day. We've seen that over the last 7 months. All of us have been thrust into the Zoom world, right? And it's important for us not only to help folks achieve a credential, but that's not enough. We need to help them achieve a mindset around continuing to learn throughout their lifespan. And so I think that that's going to be really an important piece as well, an important marker of success as well.
Okay, I see another question here from Donovan. Do professional sports have a hard time finding Black athletes? So basically, do they have a hard time finding Black athletes? What can we learn from the sports and the entertainment industries?
Actually, I had an answer for that, and I thought about that as well. You know that ETPC LLC is a company in Atlanta owned by Tyler Perry.
Okay.
And his idea was that he would develop this company. It's a production company, and they produce film and music, and basically it's an arts institute, for the lack of better words. But the idea is that it developed a center where a student could go and learn the craft. You develop a center for minority kids, and don't limit it to anybody, but the focus is trying to help minority students. And you develop that, and it becomes a draw. As soon as you get a major participant, business, or somebody that's high profile, somebody like Mr. Perry, then it starts to draw more kids to that field, that industry. I mean, if you made it, I'll give you one quick example. In Corpus Christi, there's this center where they develop training for welding, and it's the Craft Institute, I believe it's the Craft Institute of Corpus. That may be wrong. What's it called?
Craft Institute. It's a coastal blend.
That's it. Well, it's
Craft Institute of Coastal Blend.
Coastal Blend. That's correct. It's in Corpus. Initially, it was a program that the oil and gas industry needed more workers, and it actually started with Del Mar College, and eventually it broke away because they didn't see the value in it. And the executive director, felt that there was a lot of kids that were missing this opportunity to make money and to learn a real skill. And so he actively recruited minorities to the field, and he created this competition internally and externally. Some of the best, most skilled individuals in that field come from that place. And you wouldn't know it, but if you're in the industry and you get a kid or a student that came from that institute, you automatically know that this kid's ready to work because they come with such great skill, and they focused on the kids at hand. And a lot of them were minorities, and he actively recruited the minorities to this entity. That's a good example of what could happen. You know, if you STEM relate a program that's relatable to kids that understand right away, and you create what they would consider a simulator, where you have these kids that come in and they learn this craft, and you really focused on the skill, their skill sets. You're going to have a trouble with your openings. You'll be shooing people away because everyone's going to want to sign on. That's a way to do it, and it's successful. So there you go. Austin Community College, let's get cracking.
I know we've also done, and one of the bigger things that we keep doing, and Robert, you would know maybe a little bit more about this because I don't think we've been able to get it off the ground. I think maybe we've done it at Kyle, is the signing days for students who have decided to go right into work instead of maybe choosing a different option. So we do big celebrations about them joining a company on day one, which has been kind of part of our answer, but it's definitely not the whole answer. And we need to find some strong ways to kind of celebrate the going into these fields.
Now we do that at the Register Apprenticeship. Commissioner Alvarez does a celebration of kids that have graduated and moving into a field. It's kind of like when a kid graduates from high school and he's going to go to a college with a major scholarship of whatever sport that they're in. Well, the idea came from that. Commissioner Alvarez thought, you know, why don't we do that for kids that are going into the workforce? You know, they got the skills, they graduated, and we should do the same for them. Let's celebrate that success. That's a good way to do it. That's good. You were thinking that, Kara. That's a great idea. I don't know. What do you think, Don? Laura?
I absolutely agree with that. We have a graduation for our CPT class, so graduation or any kind of celebration is absolutely encouraging.
We need Mark on there too, because as soon as they're connected to her company, that's when we need them behind there going, yes, come on
Definitely.
in.
Yes.
You know, it'd be cool to see Laura's building or Don's building with a big old sign that says TD Industries. You know, all of the businesses that participate, they have some sort of placard or sign from their business that says, you know, we help, we hire these kids, and maybe they contribute a piece of equipment that help with the training or supply them with supplies that they need in order to complete their training. That would be awesome. We get, you know, it'd be kind of a NASCAR type thing where the kid has a bunch of these little patches, but it'd be on the building to really sort of express the victory that kid gets after his training. He gets hired.
One of the, a quick story for you guys. One of the most amazing experiences that I had, and this is sort of emblematic of the way that partnerships can come together and support a community of learners. Last year in August of 2019, we conducted a graduation ceremony at Lockhart Correctional Facility. We haven't talked about the justice involved population yet today, and I think that's also an important population for us to consider. Many of the, unfortunately, many of the students that we endeavor to serve in our K through 12 system and even young adults have parents who are involved in the justice system in various ways. But we had a graduation ceremony, and I actually had a chance to speak to a group out at Lockhart Correctional yesterday, a large group at Lockhart Correctional about this yesterday. There were people that literally came from all over the state of Texas to attend that graduation and to celebrate that win for those ladies that were finishing a manufacturing training program, as a matter of fact, out there. And I think that really illustrated the point to them that there is a whole community that's behind them. And as we do this work, I think it's important for us to let the students that we're serving know that there is a team, a big team of people that are behind them and supporting them and encouraging them and celebrating each of those wins, even if it's a small win. Celebrating those wins creates momentum, and momentum creates the next step, and the next step creates the next credential, and the next credential creates opportunities for continuing to grow and learn, and increases the opportunities for individuals to engage in this 21st century economy that we're in.
Don, were you able to engage with media like radio, newspaper, or television?
Yes.
Or like what I think would be awesome would be a documentary producer to highlight that program, for example.
As a matter of fact, there were a number of folks from Texas Workforce Commission that were there with us, including their public information office, and they did some filming of that particular event. Austin Community College is actually doing a documentary series right now on our work in the correctional facilities, and we're going to be launching that soon. So there's a lot of video and things from the work, not just that graduation ceremony I was mentioning, but the work that has been ongoing for a couple of years now with the correctional education programming that we're doing.
I think that's really great, because going back to Donovan's question about professional sports, I mean, professional athletes get such positive press and so much airtime. And what do scientists get? I mean, for the most part, they get really negative press, like crazy people that are trying to make scary dinosaurs and, you know, stuff like that. And so I think that one of the good scientist images out there is on The Flash. I don't even know if that's still playing. My kids used to watch it, but there's a lot of, I think that positive press is so important for most people.
I couldn't agree more. We have to capture and share the stories of those that we're serving. It helps us to be a more familiar face in the community when we do that.
All right, this has been an awesome discussion. We have 1 minute to spare, and less than that. I'm really thankful for each one of you being a part of this panel today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules and participating in this very important discussion. And we don't want this to just be a discussion, right? We want to continue this work. And so stay tuned for opportunities for us to continue to talk about collaboration opportunities. We encourage those of you who have joined in this discussion to also continue to join and connect with the ACCESS Network as well. We look forward to having you participate in ongoing professional development training, as well as networking opportunities as well. And so stay tuned for more information. Do you have any final remarks from our panelists before we close this discussion today?
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to participate. It has truly been a blessing. I was just messaging Donald to say, you know, thank you for mentioning his involvement with Lockhart, because I've been looking for a connection there. So it's always beneficial in more ways than one to attend these type of events, you know, exposing opportunities, building connections, and being collaborative in the community. So thank you again.
Great. And so what we look forward to as well, some people signed up for the workbook. We also going to share, I'm going to make an executive decision here. We're going to share this video more broadly. We want more people to be exposed to this information and to understand and to be able to connect with you. So based on, I see Kira, you provided your contact information, and I'm sure others would be open as well. And so If you would like to share, just send me a message, email, and I'll be happy to share your contact information more broadly, or program information more broadly with our attendees, and as well as part of our network. So thank you again. And for those of you who are going to continue on with the summit, our next session is at 12:30. So you have an hour, lunch on your own time, lunch in your home, I should say.
For the lunch in your own, lunch in your home. That's awesome.
And we'll get back together at 12:30, where we'll be talking about funding opportunities. And I apologize, Mr. Quick announcement. Mr. David Porter III, his brother-in-law passed away, so he gave me a call. I had to take that call from him. And so, and I know that we had another panelist that experienced a death in the family. So, so we appreciate your understanding of that. So he will not be on the panel at 12:30, but I appreciated him calling while he was on the road to make sure we were covered. So those are the type of people that we have as a part of our summit, including yourselves, those who really care about this work. So thank you again. We'll see you at 12:30.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.